What's up, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Sit Down Talk. My name is Kier.
And I'm Noemie.
And we welcome you. Clap it up for you being here today on this fine Thursday, Monday. You don't know when we recorded this.
But it's Wednesday. Well, it's supposed to be Wednesday because we're supposed to be uploading. We don't.
In the land of make-believe.
Listen, we are going to get consistent.
No, stop. You keep promising me.
Okay. If you know me, if you've been watching us for a while, then you know not to listen to me. Just let me say what I gotta say. Just let me live.
That's what I do.
Is it? Yeah. Because you just interrupted me and told me not to say what I was gonna say.
Because I edit these joints and like I've edited you I've edited you 4,000 times.
Oh, so they don't know that I say it.
We're going to be more consistent. I post it sometimes. Sometimes I'm like,
we're trying. It's hard.
It is hard. I feel like we're consistent, but we can always be more consistent.
Yeah, we definitely post consistently across our platforms. But as far as like a routine on one, nah, we're real people with real lives, real stuff that gets in the way of it.
All the time.
I'm actually sick right now. Drinking tea.
So
should be in bed.
So Noemie has food poisoning right now. She's recovering from it. Caught it Valentine's Day night. And it almost completely derailed our night, but we were still able to go out. Yeah.
But I died as soon as I came home.
Man.
It was bad.
I thought you were going down the way there. Oh, before we get into the rabbit hole, before we get into today's vlog.
We good for a rabbit hole.
If this is your first... Here we are. If this is your first time here, welcome. I love our newbies. You might be coming here from a multitude of different places you done seen our faces on, but we thank you just the same. Welcome. If you a repeat offender, you done been here before, then you already know the vibes. What's up with your baby?
Hi, family. You definitely slurp your tea.
I know. It's so bad. People like, do a mukbang, and I'm like, you're not gonna like it. Like, I eat loud, I drink loud. It's bad.
You chew like you're breaking bones.
Oh,
like,
yeah? Oh. No, what else?
Babe, go ahead. I'm not even trying to do this. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Recently, we just wrapped up the Love Hour podcast with Kev on stage and his wonderful wife, Melissa. And we had a dope time. It was a great conversation. And that conversation kind of sparked the conversation between us about vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, first, you were talking about vulnerability and your journey to getting there. And Melissa asked a question, something along the lines of, do you feel like you've contributed to Kier being a more vulnerable man now? Mm-hmm. And do you feel like in the relationship that's something that you demanded? Mm-hmm. And like, honestly, as soon as I heard the word demanded, I couldn't hear the rest of the question. It's just like that word just bothered me. And like, I hate when we say like we demand things in relationships because it comes across as if like this is something that I deserve the way that I want it to be handed to me. You know what I mean? Like, I think does everybody deserve love? I would say that, but I don't know if deserve is the best verb for that.
Yeah.
I think everyone is capable of finding love and being in love and like having love be having a positive relationship with love in their life. But I think it's more than like, this is what I want and this is what I demand of you. I think it's a lot more give and take than we give it credit for. Yeah?
Absolutely. Just the entire thought around love is convoluted because even saying that the love I deserve, when you say you deserve it, there's an expectation that you should get it, which is absolutely fine. I think that everyone should feel like they deserve love. The issue is what kind of love is going to be available to you versus the kind of love that you would ideally like to receive. Mm-hmm. And that's cutting out like mistreatment, people abusing people and lying and But I'm talking about like romantic love or maybe even interpersonal love. A lot of us have issues with the kind of love that we even get and receive from our parents because it's not written in a language that we would preferably like to read or even are able to. But that's what I mean by that. I think we don't understand love. We pigeonhole it into whatever the 90s sitcoms taught us it should be. And we live that expectation in our actual everyday lives in some small facet. And I think it's absolutely throwing everybody off.
It is. It's really throwing everybody off because like we don't even know what vision or what stereotypical vision of love we're supposed to be following. You know what I mean? Love looks so different to different people based on what they've experienced with their parents, in their relationships, and even with their friends. Like as soon as you were saying, when you were talking about your take on it, I was thinking of people who are like, even with friendships, like cutting friendships off, like, you know how they like leave the relationships that don't serve you, including friendships. And it's just like the same way you have to explain to your significant other how to love you, you might have to explain to your friends how to love you and how to show up for you. And I just feel like the whole, like, I'm just throwing this person away or stepping away from this situation without really looking deep inside with them themselves and trying to figure out, like, what is it about me that I'm trying to say to someone, whether it be your parent, your friend, you know, your significant other? What is it that I'm saying? What do I mean? And is there a disconnect? Yeah. And I know for me, it's always a disconnect. Always, always, always a disconnect.
A disconnect between what exactly?
What I mean and what actually comes out of my mouth. And what
translates. Because it got to go through so many steps. It's not just what you mean and what they hear. It's what you mean versus the words that you use to express what you mean versus the situation that you're in versus how that person's going to interpret it versus how they're going to remember it versus how they're going to feel versus their words in return coming out to you and repeating that same process. That's a very complicated exchange. Let me add a layer to that. Go ahead.
Then you could have the exact same situation or the exact same conversation happen at two different times when people are in two different spaces.
Oh man.
And that's you thrown off.
Y'all like, having the same conversation at all.
No, like even when we kind of even when we're not getting into an argument, when we're just talking, I listen so many different ways. Like I listen to your body language. I listen to the words that are actually coming out your mouth. I think about the situations that may have just happened to prompt whatever it is that you're saying. And then also knowing you and knowing how you feel, trying to figure out what you mean. Like it's automatic. It took a while for me to get there, and it was very difficult for me to do that. Like it was a very conscious, like, decision and like action steps that it took for me to do it, whereas now it's almost innate. Like it's like you'll say one thing and I listen to it 4 different ways, and then based on those like those 4 observations, I try to figure out what you mean, and if I don't understand, I'll just ask.
Same. What's been the hardest part of getting on track with that? Like getting past, because it sounds to me like if I say something, if you interpreted it a way that's clearly different than it looks like I was trying to interpret it, and you got to go throughout that whole process. Like, what was the hardest thing? What stopped you from being able to do that at first?
The hardest part is taking me out of the equation.
Man.
That's hands down easily the hardest part. Like what you're saying, whether we're in an argument or whether you're talking about yourself, it's not about me. So taking my feelings, my interpretation, what I think you should feel, what I think you should have said, I have to kind of take me out of it and look at it through like me knowing you, me loving you, and me trying to figure out what it is you're trying to say.
That right there, we can end the video, because that's the bailiwick of almost everybody's issues with other people.
It's hard to do.
How can you separate yourself from anything when you've been inside yourself for your entire existence? Like it's tough.
And you can't do it for everybody, nor should you.
And you can't do it for the same person in every situation. And then when you can't, you got guilt that creeps in, and remorse and regret and all of these other feelings. And that's why we pop up and we got random anxieties, and we can't figure out where it's coming from. Because something's been tugging at your left side for so long, now your back hurts and you can't figure out why. And it's like, that's how those stresses happen. It's not 100 pounds on you at one time. It's 0.25 pounds just tagged on you every day.
You don't even notice it until it's so heavy. You're like, what? Where did this come from?
3 years later, you're on my 500-pound life.
Let me not even do that. The biggest jump is, you don't feel it until you finally recognize it, and then you let it go. And you're like, what?
Yeah, see,
I was holding all of this.
that's not a thing for me. Letting it go. No, that's not a thing.
I think that's where we disconnect. Then.
Yeah, that's the issue I have with a lot of like, man, I'm coming for the Instagram therapists, like I am.
Yeah.
I'm coming for them because people are really giving some really, really terrible advice to the masses, and people are just because they're in
Eating it all
pain.
up,
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing that blows me about Instagram motivation is they always tell you to stop doing something, but never really explain to you how to stop doing it. You need to stop letting people into your life that XYZ. You need to stop letting people talk to you XYZ.
Yeah.
And what I found is that if people can, they usually do. And can isn't always about ability.
Yeah.
It's about capacity. It's not that I don't know how to do this. It's I'm in a space where this is just a weak part of my entire persona.
Everybody has weaknesses.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has weaknesses. Own them and decide whether or not you don't want them to be weaknesses anymore.
One thing
but we can't do it all the time.
You can't do
we
it
can't
all
do
the
it
time.
all the time.
That's one thing you taught me is, you taught me just by when you live with a person for a while and you watch them move, the stuff you admire about them, you kind of pick up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One thing I picked up from you is the strongest people aren't the people who avoid their weaknesses. It's the people who see their weaknesses and like, oh, I know you. What's up, Fred? You sit in the corner. I'm gonna get somebody to handle you while I go do all the shit that I'm actually good at. And I learned that because at first
I didn't even know I did that.
I gotta strengthen my weaknesses. Iron sharpens iron, and I jab your boob. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't.
Oh, okay.
It was my arm. I'm just soft.
You better close it
Soft. Where did we get that from?
It was the meme when the little boy was mad at his grandma. He walked out the car. He about to slam his.
I wish you would slam my goddamn door. You better close it soft.
We've been saying this for years.
I think that was on Vine.
Wow.
Millennials.
That's a whole nother conversation. Did y'all know there's a whole beef out here between millennials and Gen Zers or Gen Zs?
Yeah. They be eating our lunch too. They be right.
Yo, they be right. They right. They're right. We have turned into
millennials going to millennial,
like
boy.
the early 20-year-olds that were, in that age in like the 90s. They'll be like, y'all don't know music. Y'all don't know nothing. And we're like, y'all are whack. We have turned into them. Calm down, guys. We're old.
Oh, y'all don't know music. Back in my day, we used to listen to this. Go Shawty. And it's like he ran party with party 7 times.
But
like,
then also, as millennials, we over here doing TikToks and dances to songs. I bet you don't know the artist name. We don't know these people.
what's the name of the boy that do the?
Yeah, and we look crazy, y'all. It's all right. I own it.
I'm starting to own it.
We were going to be corny at some point, and now's our time.
Ridiculous.
It's not our time to shine, guys. It's okay. But it is on this page, because this is a Kier Noemie channel, and we can do what we want.
Boom, I'm doing it by myself.
Oh. We're so whack.
So, but vulnerability. So, where were we? Shit.
Damn, Jeopardy.
Oh, rest in peace, Alex Trebek.
I know. Dang. That made me sad. Whole childhood. Okay, we were talking about weaknesses.
Yes.
I'm on it.
That's one of my weaknesses, like letting go. If I could, I would.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to let go of something. And my conscious mind knows, like, this is silly, bro. Like, why are you holding on to it? But it means so much to me in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, to hold on to that means so much to me that I literally can't find the mechanisms to release it. Like, that shit don't exist in my skull.
Let's talk about that, though.
Oh, man. Yeah, let's do it. Because
So,
I
like,
want to explore that. I don't
yeah.
know why.
Can I just put a disclaimer real quick?
Sure.
So we always talk about couples counseling. We always talk about the importance of therapy. Are we currently today in therapy? No, and I want to explain why. And this is just like my little disclaimer.
I have no idea what you're about to say.
He doesn't. I think a lot of times we go to therapy to solve a particular problem, but what therapy has at least done for me is given me the tools, and my time outside of therapy, I'm actually applying it. So if I'm going back to therapy, it's mostly like an accountability thing, like checking in, are you applying your tools? Are you applying your tools? I feel like I am finally applying the tools in a consistent, almost like natural way that is like basically my years of therapy and couples therapy and
All
couples counseling.
amalgamated into
It's
one.
finally paying off, and I feel like when I do go back to therapy, which, you know, I will, of course, but like I just feel like I'm applying it. So this is an example of like go to therapy, but also spend time applying the tools that you learn about in therapy. And that's basically what we about to do.
Yeah, that's a good note. Plus, our therapists don't take our insurance.
Yeah, so we pay out of pocket.
Mad expensive. He's
So
good, but he is expensive.
We have to use them because we don't got the bread.
Looking at that bill like, what?
We gonna go back. We gonna go back because we tried and it didn't work.
we go back sometimes if it's rough. We'll go back every maybe 2 weeks if it's real rough.
Yeah,
we'll go back every
more than 2 weeks. If we go back, we usually go back for like a month at a time.
Nah, when things are real bad, we'll go every 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, every 2 weeks.
And then like for maintenance, we'll go either once a month or like once every 3 months. So like the way you do therapy is really dependent on how y'all are moving along to work. And individual therapy outside of couples therapy helps that process move along even smoother.
It talks about like you being afraid, or not afraid, but reluctant to let go of things.
Let it go, yeah.
And why is that?
I don't know, man. Usually with me, it's things that I feel like are unsolved. Like if we had an issue and we came to the resolution, and whatever resolution we came to is really, really far apart from what I ideally would like to have to feel better. Sometimes that empty space in between, it kind of like you want to hold on to it because you want to still feel like your point was valid. Sometimes when you compromise, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes when I compromise, I do feel like I've given up too much ground for the sake of like settling the issue.
So when you say you've given up too much ground, to who or to what?
To you about the situation that I'm beefing with. Like my conscious mind knows like, hey, like it's not about giving up ground, it's about meeting somebody where they're at. I might walk 25%, I might have to walk 80. But on the days where I feel like I'm walking 80, that other, you know what I'm saying, that whatever I left behind, like I hold on to that because I feel like otherwise it's like, all right, it's squash.
So what is your unconscious mind thinking? Because I know what your conscious mind thinks because we talk about it on the vlog, like fine. But like what is your unconscious mind saying? Like raw in that moment. I think that's where I'm trying to get to.
It's like, man, it's more of the same bullshit. Like this is the same issue that we've been having for years. It's a different iteration of the same issue. It's the same issue dressed in another outfit. And that builds frustration for a lot of different reasons because you always feel like when you have a big blow up and then you settle stuff, I statement. And it's not that it's not getting addressed. It's that in my head it gets addressed the way it does when it's only one person solving the issue. But when I bring it to you, it's not like you're going to completely, like as much as you take yourself out, you're still a factor in this situation. So you're going to have a side that's going to counter some of the things that I find important. And it's just always rough to hear somebody give you a counterpoint to something you find personal without feeling like it's being minimized. Does that make any sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I just saw like you struggle with saying I statements.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that. And I never noticed that before.
Because there's still a part of me that feels like, ironically, like feelings, and all the talking about feelings, I get feelinged out.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I feel. After a while, I was like, yeah, I don't give a about the way I feel no more. I just want to get this over with. And I think. But
that's ironic because you just talked about being afraid to let go. Yeah. But in these moments, you just want to let it go, but you can't.
You can't. If it's not about ability, it's about bandwidth. That is an area in my life I struggle with. I struggle with the world. I struggle with myself. I struggle with my daughter. I struggle with my family. It's different iterations of the same problem, same issue, different outfits.
So follow up.
Oh Lord.
I've seen you change and grow and evolve and adjust and pivot and all of those things throughout the course of the past couple of years. But like, this isn't something that you would have been comfortable talking about a year ago.
Nah, it's not something I'm not that comfortable talking about. But
you're leaps and bounds more comfortable than before.
Yeah.
You are, you know, and I'm just very interested in knowing like why.
I don't know.
Like, why is it so, like, I'm telling you, like, I'm shocked.
I'm not, you know me, like, some dudes are, like, real intentional. Like, I set this here to make sure this happens when this happens, when this happens. I'm not that intentional. I got good instincts. I lean into my instincts. Like, hey, like, the way you going right now, this ain't working. and you need to try something different. And that's the first time when I told you, like, you hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Like, that really changed and made me feel like I had space to say things that I thought were going to hurt you, but you still move past yourself and listen to me.
Yeah.
You know, and that was...
How did that feel to know that, like, I listened?
Afterwards,
yeah,
it felt great. In the moment, I felt nervous. Before then, I felt like a cold sucker. Yeah. I felt like a cold bitch. Yeah, man. Like, I had to tell you something you were saying was hurting my feelings. Like, in my head, I should be able to overcome that. And I know we like to use the word toxic masculinity. I'm going to push back on that, because to insinuate that someone's deficits in terms of understanding is toxic by default, that's different.
Yeah,
that's,
without understanding all that comes along with
that's not exactly toxic masculinity. That's not like a blanket statement to cover all behaviors that men do that are socially unacceptable. But either way, I'm still not comfortable saying that. I didn't grow up like that. Like, and I grew up in a house where we talked about feels all the time. But just like the house raises you, but your community raises you for real. Both of your parents got accents. You ain't got no accent.
Yeah.
The house don't raise you like the world raises you. Yeah. And while your house loves you and gives you that grounding, the world, the neighborhood I grew up in, wasn't no time for feelings. Somebody say something crazy, you smack them. Yeah. People are reactive. People are desperate. And in that environment, I just don't think that's something that I picked up. And maybe that's a me thing, because not everybody from there operates the same way.
So how is it that you weren't able to pick up on it yourself, but I feel like you're so good at picking up on it with other people? Like, it's funny to me, and I know all therapists kind of have this, like the best therapists need therapy. Like, that's a known,
oh my God,
like...
the best therapists have great therapists.
Yeah, but, like, that's a known thing. But, like, it's just funny to me how you are still so able to, like, just pick up on, like, nuances and things that other people do and connect the dots. And it's like, when you do it to yourself, like, you'll have this huge aha moment, like, babe, I just figured this out. And I'm like, sir, like, you just told Sally and this last week, and you ain't see it's the same situation.
Raise your hand if you give amazing advice to everybody in the world that you can't follow yourself. Yeah. Welcome home. We're your people. I want to be very careful not to, like, label vulnerability as a male-female thing. Men are less emotionally vulnerable than women, because there are also women who struggle to be vulnerable in their relationships, and that conversation doesn't help them. Like, this is an issue that everyone has. My brand of not being vulnerable is different than yours.
Absolutely.
It comes from a different place to protect a different thing.
Yep. And I think that original... I don't know anything about anybody, but I can talk about me and how I move in my relationship. I think that, like, you struggled with your openness about your vulnerability, and I didn't, which makes it look like stereotypically that it's harder for men to be vulnerable than it is for women to be vulnerable. But I'm still wrong in my vulnerability, how I address it or how I prioritize it. You know what I mean? Like, me battling my vulnerability doesn't make it easier for me to do it. Like, just because I'm willing to talk about something doesn't mean it's just as easy for me to fix it. You know what I mean?
I got you. Yeah. So that's actually like, fixing the problem, I put in a different place from being able to express it.
I can acknowledge all of my problems. Whether or not I choose to fix them, that's a whole different story.
I'm about to step on my own toes. I got a gender-based, like, hypothesis of why. I think it's the way that women use community and how, like, being vulnerable gains you community access versus separates you from the herd. With a bunch of, like, if you have a group of women, you be like, girl, you know I'm insecure. And it'll be like, that grants you community acceptance. You wear your emotions on your sleeve. If you have a really insecure guy in a group, it's usually he's going to fall into a weird place. There's going to be one guy who probably, like, maybe ridicules him, makes him feel a certain kind of way. He might struggle to find his voice in a group of dudes. Like, everyone talking, he might want to insert himself and he can't. Like, it's just different. There's not the same community membership for being vulnerable until now.
Yeah.
It's just started, like, in the last couple of years.
It's so different now. I think you're right, at least in my experience, because I'm thinking about it. I tend to be disagreeable by nature, so like I always try to find holes in what people say, and I can't find one in my personal experience, because I know for a fact right now, if I were to go on one of my group chats, because I have a whole bunch of like girlfriend group chats, and say, y'all, I'm having a bad day, I would get a phone call. Somebody will offer to bring me food. Somebody will offer to come over. Somebody will offer to bring me wine. Somebody would offer to take my baby. Somebody, like, I just know, even if I were to put it on Instagram, like, I just know I have this like huge community of women specifically that are there. Whether or not that is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know.
Why would it be a bad thing?
Because it might be enabling in some way. You
yeah.
know, it could be enabling. It could be like,
it could feed attention
like
seeking behavior.
I could be like, oh, I messed up at work. No, girl, I'm sure you did fine. You don't know if I just blew up the building. like I know for me, I don't ask no questions when it comes to my girlfriends. I'm like, oh, you need this? I'm here. I'll ask the questions later. But my girls are writers. I definitely see how it has been problematic in my past. But that's also a me thing. I can't speak for everybody in their circles, but I know that I have used that support. I haven't always used that support for good.
Yeah.
I've definitely used it to try to justify things that somebody else probably told me I was messed up for doing, but I didn't really feel that way, and I just needed somebody to be on my side.
The old second opinion.
Yeah. You know, I mean, granted, of course, that was much more when I was like younger. My friends will definitely hold me accountable nicely, but they still, you know what I mean? It's different now, but I see that shift.
Yeah.
I totally see that shift throughout like my 20s and now like early 30s. I totally see that.
Dang, man, you made me realize that you actually also growing up, the way you're socialized, you get a lot more practice in expressing your feelings and being vulnerable in a social space.
Especially like I always say this, if you were a teenager in the 2000s, I can't speak for teenagers now, but it was rough. It was rough. People are mean, and you constantly have to like defend yourself. There's a whole bunch of rumors. It was like the dawn of social media and like what is it? What do they call them? Instagram cyberbullies. Like that was real, and that was the first time I've ever experienced firsthand and through observation what other girls were going through during that. It was horrible.
That's why you can never win an argument versus your girlfriend or wife. She's been doing this since middle school. Like, women have to deal with men and other women. Like, give them.
I tell Kier all the time, I'm just really waiting for somebody to come.
Get them some space.
I'm really waiting for I prepare. I go through arguments in my head, like just in case somebody says something like this, what I'm gonna say back. Like, I'm ready.
I can't do my mouth is crazy, man.
But you don't think of it like you don't have to think much about it. He just goes for it, guys.
Moving on.
Yeah.
When you say vulnerability, like what the hell do you even mean? Because we toss vulnerability, self-care, protect your space, protect your peace. We throw toxicity.
I got it.
We throw it around all the time. Like vulnerability, what does that even mean to you? Because I don't know.
So for me, vulnerability is less about what you say or what you admit, and more about how open you are to hearing something that's different than how you feel. So for me, I think of being vulnerable using our relationship, for example. Let's say a vulnerable moment might be for me like, hey babe, I feel like we haven't really been spending that much time, one-on-one time together. Like, we're committed to the work, we're committed to, being parents, but like I don't feel like I'm a priority for you.
Do you feel this way for real?
No.
Okay.
Do I seem believable?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's not how I feel.
It.
No. My idea of vulnerability is you being able to say, damn, babe, I didn't even notice you felt that way because I am trying to do. Remember when I did this and remember when I did that? Vulnerability is me being able to hear that and be like, okay, like there's clearly a disconnect. So now that I know where you're at, let's try to figure out how to get to the middle. And I feel like in the past, I would have been like, you're just making excuses. Like, I just told you how I felt and you're not focusing on how I'm feeling. And I think when people think that they're being vulnerable, they want to not be coddled, but they want that rub on their back and be like, oh my God, I'm sorry. But I think real vulnerability is being able to hear like, this is how I'm feeling and this is how you're feeling. And it's totally different and we're on totally different pages, but I recognize that there's an issue. So how do we get there? So that's when I think of, am I willing to be able to say this and hear something different and be okay? And I don't know that I'm being vulnerable if I'm not open to hearing that. Because that's when, you know, you being defensive, like me being defensive comes into play, or me not hearing you and you not feeling heard, and all of those things.
I got you.
What about you? What do you think of when you hear vulnerability?
When I hear vulnerability, I think about being honest about my feelings toward you and fighting the fact that it may make you feel bad. So pushing through the fact that it's uncomfortable and it'll make you feel bad for the greater good of having you understand what I'm upset about, so you could be my partner in trying to fix this. Because either we in it together or we not. And if we're not in the same boat, it's easy to see the other person as the problem instead of the problem as the problem. So I know that about myself, and I try to get it out the way quick. Like, hey, I'm drifting away right now.
Yeah.
So, like, you got space right now where we could talk about this? Because I need to, like, don't get it bent. I am not always that calm. I am not always that nice, because you are who you have the availability to be in the moment, but you also got to realize that your words, I know you're hurt, but that does not exonerate you from the responsibility of the words that you say to other people and the impact that it has on them. It doesn't exonerate you for that. You're still responsible for that. So I also got to make sure that if the conversation is getting to a place where I'm becoming accusatory and I'm becoming blaming, step back. Step back. Like, you know what? This ain't even coming out the way I planned it to. And that's why I do my notes. Write the notes.
Yeah,
I had a note folders like everything I hate about this.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It was like
I do the same thing.
Yeah, it's like all the problems I had with the relationship. That was the name of the note thing.
Yeah.
And I listed them in box checks, and I went back like you do, and I read them, and I was like, nah, that's kind of, I don't feel that way no more.
That's kind of ridiculous.
That don't make sense.
The reason why I was not laughing, but smiling while you were talking is, like, I'm seeing something that might be an issue for a listener listening to this. The way that we define vulnerability, or anything that portrays perceived weaknesses in ourselves, are always, like, wrapped up in our shit. Like, even when you were saying, like, what vulnerability means to you, it made me think of the issues that you have with vulnerability. And the definition that you created is one that kind of cushions the issues that you have with vulnerability. Like, being soft enough to say how you feel without being judged. Like, that's a very important thing to you. I don't care how anybody feels about what I say. So my idea of vulnerability, or what it means for me to be vulnerable, won't have anything to do with that.
It's not applicable in this space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's just very, like, it's determined on who you are and how you respond to stuff. Like, my idea of vulnerability is, like, not making it about myself, because that's one of the issues that I have with myself. It's like, I feel like in these moments I have to work to not put myself insert myself in a problem that's not mine. I feel like for you, it's like the being heard part, you know? And it's like, of course your definition is going to be focused on that. And I didn't notice that until right now.
But that's what's important to us individually.
Yep.
Asserting yourself is very important to you, and being heard is very important to me. Imagine if we weren't in this space to have these conversations, man.
We'd be so misunderstood
of each other, and spending every day together and thinking that, oh, well, I love you, so it might be enough for these fists to crash at some point. And we just, like ships in the night, just continuously missing each other.
There's so many things, even from this conversation right now, I'm recognizing about our relationship, but I'm definitely seeing growth. Like,
how do you know you grow, though, especially in the space of vulnerability? Like, what's the measuring rod?
It's like the example that you talked about, letting stuff go, and you were like, you don't feel heavy until it's like 500 pounds
so that's
of weight.
Up on you, yeah.
For me, I don't mind letting go. I actually find joy in letting things, people, emotions, like, things go. I've just understood that, like, I'm like this cup, right? I can only hold so many things. And the more stuff that's in it, the heavier and the harder it is to move. And I always feel better when I just dump stuff out. Like, that's just, I've always been that person. It feels lighter.
The cup feels lighter.
It's like, the cup is a bad analogy, because I really just see, like, it's like clarity for me. Like, I feel like a lot of our relationship was foggy. Like, I can kind of see where I was going, and I was good with the direction, but it's like the more that we're leveling up, the vision just seems clearer. Like, and I'm more sure of it.
I hate that I have to. No, you're making sense. That's not what
Okay.
that face is.
Oh.
I hate that I have to say this, but leveling up is not material. It has nothing to do. The leveling up we're talking about has nothing to do with the house that we own.
Oh, yeah.
It has
yeah.
nothing to do with the money
It's
that
all
we
emotional,
make. It has nothing to do with our social status or us being relationship goals or black couple goals or none of that. All of that stuff means absolutely nothing to the overall health of our relationship.
Yeah.
But I think people get confused because once you inside this thing, you're like, oh, this ain't what it looked like from the outside.
It's not.
It looks like a SUV from the outside, and you get in, and it's a 2-door.
It's a
and
Civic.
y'all up in there like with your knee by your cheekbone.
Yeah.
I think you have to get in it to see what it is sometimes.
Yeah.
But from the outside, people are like, damn, is that an RV? It's so spacious. What is this, 20 feet?
But let me add to it. You're not in that Civic forever.
Nah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And I feel like leveling. If we're gonna use the car example, because I didn't really like the cup example. Like I went with it
for the redemption.
Yeah,
go ahead. Get your
but like
thing.
even using that car example, like to me, leveling up is we got comfortable. Like we've been in the Civic for a minute, yo. Like
the car smells like us.
It smelled like us.
Not
like we know how to make it work. We found a way to manage. It's still a little uncomfortable, and I feel like leveling up is getting a new car instead of the 2-door. Now we in a midsize.
Oh, damn.
You know what I mean? And it's just like you don't gotta be in the Civic forever. People, I'm not gonna say people, I think sometimes we choose to be in those situations because it's uncomfortable, but you found a way to be okay with the discomfort.
Yeah.
And it's like we're not okay with the discomfort, but we know how to make it work. And now that we don't have to anymore, we can choose to get out this car and go and get a bigger one or a different one. But it's a choice.
Yeah, it is, but
Disagree?
That's a funny analogy because when you talk about hopping in a car, first thing I think about was, well, how far are we going?
Yeah.
And our relationship has kind of proved to me through these little leveling ups that I felt like we were going to be in that 2-door forever. When our relationship first started, we had all these expectations and we know each other well, but we thought this is how a relationship's supposed to go, so we just kind of... Like I felt like we were going to be in that 2-door forever,
and we were for a minute.
Man,
we were there for a long time.
That joint was not the wave.
But we not in that car no more.
We not, but like we slowly like upgraded. Every time we upgrade, I get more confidence that we'll upgrade again. So I don't mind driving from New York to North Carolina in a little Civic because I know as soon as we get to the South Carolina border, we're gonna have us a nice little Chevy Cruze. A little bit bigger.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then once we get to Florida and we come back up, maybe we're going to go to Louisiana. Maybe we get us a small SUV or something.
Yeah.
The thing about that is when you slightly upgrade cars every time, you'll go from like a 92 Geo Metro to a Rolls Royce Phantom and you won't feel the difference because it's so incremental.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks you're going to hop from the Metro to the Phantom, but the step in between cars is so little sometimes that you don't see where you level up.
I think we're going to agree to agree to disagree because I just said I don't feel that way. Like I feel the leveling up. You don't. You know what I mean? So I think some people will feel it, some people won't. And I think you're just one of those people who don't.
That's not true. Let me be clear. It's not that I don't feel the level up. It's just like from here to where we last were, I can feel that jump, but it's not a humongous upgrade to me. Here, from where we were a year ago, is a humongous jump.
Yeah.
But we didn't do it, so I feel like I'm getting too far into the car.
No, it's okay. I think you're trying to prove your point, and I think your point is valid. I just disagree with it, and I think that's okay. I think it's just the way that we look at it.
And I think that's okay.
No, and I think it's okay that we disagree. But I think it's just a matter of perspective. Like, it could be you expected a huge jump, and you didn't get it, so it doesn't feel that big, or you expected nothing, and every huge jump feels big. I pretty much expected what we were when we got married was who we were going to be. Like, I knew we would change. Yeah, I knew we would change, and I was hopeful that we would change, but I wasn't going to bet all my money to tell you where we would be. Yeah. So I think, like, seeing where we are, even since, I'm not even going as far back as when we met. Like, since we got married to here, I think you're a different person. I think I'm a different person. I think our relationship is completely different. And I didn't expect that much of a jump to happen this soon.
Yeah, I think...
So that's why it's so...
Yeah, we do see this completely different ways.
Yeah, it's so easy for me to see. But yeah, I think it's a matter of perspective, and I think that's okay as long as you take the time at some point to look back and see how far you went. What the initial emotion is, it's up to you, whatever. But I definitely think everyone can relate to like being in their position and looking back to when they dreamed they were in this position.
Yeah.
Or like when it was worse.
What happens when you're in a relationship or you're in a series of relationships where you're vulnerable and it's hard for you to do that? And then the second you do that, either you immediately regret it based on what that person says back to you or what they do. Or it's one of those things you're like, all right, I never do this. Vulnerable. And your head get cut off right then and there. And you're like, see, that's why I don't do this.
I think about this all the time, so I gotta answer for that too.
You gotta answer for it all.
No, but honestly, I've really been in this like introspective space about vulnerability specifically because I always thought I was vulnerable and I realized that I wasn't. And that was hard for me to accept.
Is it that you weren't vulnerable or you could have been more vulnerable in certain situations?
I don't think I was vulnerable.
What point of your life you talking about?
Even like in our relationship, I don't always think that I was vulnerable. I think I showed anger. I think I showed sadness, but I don't think I explained how I felt. Like, and I think that's a huge, I don't regret those things, but I do think in my mind, I felt like I was being more vulnerable than I really was.
What did you feel like you were protecting when you were being non-vulnerable?
Like, I felt like, and not just with you, in every relationship that I've been in, I felt like if I don't give you all of me, you can't break me. Like, if we weren't going to work out, I would be okay because I saved this little piece of me for myself. So it's like, and I've always been fine in relationships because of that. In all of my past relationships, in some way, I've responded that way. It was just like, all right, cool. Like, you doing this, fine. Even in our relationship, for a long time, there's still parts of me that I haven't completely shared with you. Not on purpose, but just like I'm so used to only dishing out this little bit and you can do with that as like with what you will or whatever the saying is. I don't know English. It was definitely like protective, and I felt like because I loved you so much and because I was so committed to our relationship, it was okay for me to do that. But that's not vulnerability. It's not. It's cute. It worked. It got us this far.
It's cute.
I think it got us this far, but I think like those tactics don't work in a long-term marriage. They might work in a relationship. Nah. It works for, a couple years.
It's nowhere to go in the marriage.
Yeah, it's not. That wasn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad you realized that.
But I didn't know I was doing that. It took a lot of therapy. It took a lot of arguments, our conversations, and me like understanding that there's a disconnect, and it's just like, yo, like he really don't know what's in my head right now.
There you go. So what do people do if they're in a situation where they're trying to be vulnerable and the person either doesn't respond or they stick their head out and it gets cut off the first time and then they're reluctant to be vulnerable? And
I was talking about how like I think when you think about that situation, it's like I put myself out there and I didn't get what I wanted, I'm mad.
I got the opposite of what I wanted.
I got but I think that just goes back to that definition of like, it's not really about me getting back what I wanted. It's about me putting how I feel out there. You know what I mean? Like vulnerability isn't so much about the response that you get. It's more about like you being able to say like, this is too heavy. I'm gonna put it over here. What that person does with it, I don't know. It could be positive. It could be negative. If you watch The Bachelor, you saw how that happened. But we'll talk about that another day.
In order to be vulnerable and tell somebody like, hey, this is too heavy, for a lot of people, that's the first barrier of admitting that they cannot do something by themselves. Yeah. Then you're asking for assistance from somebody who you're having a bit of an issue with. Yeah.
Who may or may not be able to help you. Who may or may not even care in this moment.
Who may or may not make it worse. Yeah. And you got to do all of that in a moment where you're feeling emotionally compromised and you're not feeling your strongest. That is a lot to ask of someone in a moment.
I will say, even like in response to that, like vulnerability is uncomfortable. And if you're trying to find comfort in your vulnerability, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah, at least not initially. I feel like we went around the universe, but vulnerability, I think it just speaks to that whole thing. Yeah. It's not just one thing. You're always saying people need to be more vulnerable. what I challenge you to do is, if your partner is having issues being vulnerable, like, create a space and let's talk about it. Even some softball questions to get them comfortable talking until y'all can talk about what the actual issue is.
Right.
Or perhaps you could talk outside of anger and frustration or whatever's going on in the moment. Just so you have cool heads, calm hearts, and y'all can get through that conversation effectively, man. Cause it's hard out here, and we gonna say it all the time. Relationships are hard, and they are designed to be incredibly difficult and challenging. If that was not the case, then your daddy would be your mama's high school boyfriend.
Somebody's gonna be like, and he is.
Thanks, 1 of 4 billion.
Right.
That's gonna wrap up this conversation. But again, we do want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Make sure you comment below and tell us what you thought about some of our thoughts.
Yeah.
Thinking on thinking.
Whether you agree, disagree, I want to hear it all, because we will be the first. He's a therapist. I'm not. I don't know what I'm talking about half of the time, but I do know a little bit about me. I know about me, and I know how we communicate with each other. I am an expert on our love. Just give me my therapy degree, y'all. Just give it to me.
All that for nothing. Make sure that you hit the notification button so that you can know of all of our posts as soon as they post. Also, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, because that's very important. That's how we know you family. This is probably going to be our last episode not doing the podcast, so we'll have probably mics and headphones for the next episode. Just giving you a heads up, which will be posted on the Wednesday after next, because we've gone to every other week. You want to do the thing? All right, I'm going to snap unless you want to. You want to do it?
What do we say? How do we end it? Oh, you already did the subscribe and click the link? Oh, okay. Bye, guys.